Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Guitar Talk. I'm your host, Mike Higgins, and it's great to be with you today. We like to talk about all different styles of music, guitars, and the folks that play them, and the folks that play with great guitar players. If you've got an interesting instrument you'd like to share with the viewers, reach out to me. Maybe we can get you on the show and we can talk about it a little bit. But I'm very happy to bring you today's guest. He's a veteran of some of the most famed stages in New England, and particularly in Rhode Island. He's played with great bands encompassing all the great parts of funk and soul music and blues, bands like the Dynamic Johnsons and the Groove Masters. He's done vocal things with the Pink Tuxedos, and he's got some theater experience. And I met him a few years back. We got to jam a little bit. And it's wonderful to have him here today, ladies and gentlemen, Gary Cummings. Welcome aboard, Gary.
Thank you, brother. It's nice to be here. I think it was more than a few years ago.
It was more than a few years ago, yeah. I think maybe early, mid-'80s.
30 years, probably, yeah.
Where'd they go?
Now, that's how you think nowadays, you know. It's in decades rather than years.
I know it.
I know terrible, terrible.
So you were, I could tell when I first heard you sing and saw you perform that the great James Brown played a big part in your early influence and development.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. From as early as I can remember being alive, there was just something that caught me when I heard the guy, you know. So I stood in my house as a young boy and played his music and tried to dance like him, and
yeah.
Actually, I kind of figured it out.
You sure did. You sure did. Was it the Dynamic Johnsons that had you and Dennis McCarthy singing?
Myself and Dennis, a guy named John Packer, who was a great guitar player. You know, he had a real nice, like a Thunderbird sound.
Yep.
Yeah. Jocko Wimpheimer, they're both gone. Dennis is gone now, too. Yeah, and a guy named Pete McNamee, who was still around somewhere, I guess. He was a classical guitarist.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were pretty popular.
Yes, you were.
For a couple of years there, yeah. And
I noticed that Packer, he did what you need to do in a good soul band. He just stayed in that pocket.
Yeah.
And drove that rhythm home.
That's right, and used a telly.
Yes, the telly man.
Telly makes a difference in something like
that. It does.
It does.
It's the right sound for that. I think early on, both James Brown's guys had tellies at one point.
It was the guitar of choice, you know, until the other thing came along.
Yeah. One guy in James Brown would always stick with those. Jimmy Nolan played those chords.
Yeah, he's my man.
And who was the other guy that did more of the chicken-picking, singular line kind of thing?
I'm not good with names.
I forgot the other guitar player's name.
My memory is, I've never been somebody who paid attention to the names of the guys and groups.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know, I never thought of it.
But I mean, that band they wrote the book on how to do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
No question about it.
And I've met James a few times. I worked on the show a few times, and it's amazing how calm and, you know, down to earth he was in his normal, until somebody aggravated him, obviously.
Right.
But in general, it was just slow walking, slow talking, cordial, you know, easy person to talk to. It was nice.
I think one of the great stories about how he was able to calm people was that night at the Boston Garden.
Yeah, that's classic, man. That's
when the place was ready to explode into violence and erupt, and he just came out and put the whole thing in a state of coolness and played great music. And was it the mayor at the time, Kevin White, I think?
Yeah. He wanted to cancel the show. James said, no, cancel it. Put it on TV. Keep him in the house.
Yes, and it kept it all good. Everybody got along once the music started.
It was too bad because he was always a proponent of peace, education.
Yes, he was.
And all that sort of thing, you know, and acting right so people don't think there's something wrong with you. But yet, the outside world, you know, the white world, for a better thing, thought of him as like a maniac guy that could, you know, he was just a nut, you know.
Yeah.
And he was not a nut at all. He was just
Very
genius.
articulate, very
Yeah.
intelligent man.
Yeah, you know, he's a genius. You know.
His genius, and it
And
lives
he
on
could
in
sing.
his music.
A lot of people thought he was just a screamer, but man, you hear some of them ballads.
Oh,
Try to sing them. Sheesh,
they
forget
tear your
about
heart apart. I mean, that
yeah.
guy. No, I've never heard more soul and emotion come out of a singer in my life than what came out of James Brown.
it. No.
You know, just he wrote the book on it, and I mean, you really carried that forward into the bands that you were in. You could feel those rhythms with the Groove Masters too, and that's folks. For those of you who don't know, that's Paul Murphy on that
Murphy.
T-shirt.
That's my boy.
Yeah,
He's got big ears, and you know, in the music business,
Tall Paul.
when you say somebody's got big ears, it means they can hear everything. They hear every note, every whine. I used to call Paul up on the phone sometimes because I tried to play a guitar like for the last 45 years. I can't do it. But every now and then I'd be strumming around, I'd find this thing that sounded like a chord. And I'd call Paul up on the phone. I say, Paul, this sounds like a chord to me. And I'd go like that. And he'd go, yeah, that's an A sus with add 6.
Yeah,
Just from hearing the strum on the phone. It was
yeah,
amazing.
he's a fantastic musician.
Stupid. Yeah, stupid.
You know, from Taunton, folks, it was a 25-minute ride up the street, up 44, to venues like Lupo's, the Met, the Last Call Saloon, and all these wonderful blues and soul bands could be heard. And that's where I met Paul, actually, was at the Last Call, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to know him a bit after that, and I used to go in and see him all the time at different gigs, and then he joined Duke's band, of course, and
Yeah.
we lost him.
That
when he
was the
on
end of
tour.
that.
Yeah.
In Brazil, yeah.
But what a wonderful player. When I used to go see him with the Groove Masters, again, a guy that he just, his groove and his rhythm was flawless.
Yeah.
He was in the pocket. I mean, he took solos with the Groove Masters too.
He took some.
Fine solos.
Nobody could build a solo like him because he
He
didn't.
built it from the rhythm.
He built it every time was a little bit. I mean, everybody has same licks that they do now and then, signature licks.
Sure.
But basically, when he would do a solo, you could see his mind thinking like 3 bars ahead of himself. I don't know how far ahead he was, but it was and it sounded like and it built like it was a rehearsed kind of certain type of thing that was supposed to happen, but it was brand new every time.
And that was his musical genius, because he had the tools, he had the skills, and then the rest comes from talent. And you could see when they'd be on an extended groove, and he'd take a solo. The guys would hold it right in the pocket, and he would just develop these wonderful extended ideas in the music. And it always, you could see that he had some interest in jazz.
Oh yeah,
with some of the things he'd do.
He started out in a jazz band called Channel One.
I never got to see them.
I used to see them at Allery's, the old Allery's down
yeah.
on South Main Street. Yeah, and that was my first introduction to Paulie.
Yep.
He was just a fine man in general.
He was a great guy. And I used to love it when, you never knew who was going to drop in on that Wednesday night gig at the Last Call.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the first time I met Tommy Onright, ladies and gentlemen, who's no longer with us. Exceptional musician, a great guitarist, songwriter, singer, and a really solid bass player. But he came in one night, and I'd heard of him. And he came in and mostly played slide that night. Brought in a super reverb, set it on the floor, cranked the volume, and I just went, wow, this guy is out of sight.
He used to make his own slides, too, from bottle tops. He had this method where he'd get a string, and he'd soak it with some kind of fluid, lightable fluid, and wrap it really, really tight around the neck, and then light it on fire, and then just go tick, tick, and it would come off a perfect slide for his finger.
Wow.
Yeah. And just, for anybody out there that's trying to be a guitar player and isn't yet, these guys that we're talking about, every time I've ever visited them, because they were friends of mine too, we just didn't work together. And every time I went to their house, if we had 6 gigs in a row, 7 gigs in a row, didn't matter. Every time I went to their house, they were sitting there playing their guitar, practicing.
That's what it takes.
That's what it takes, yeah.
You got to practice. And in this day of instant gratification with the internet and YouTube, none of that cuts it. You got to sit there and play, and you've got to listen.
Yeah.
That's how you get good. And if you've got a little bit of talent, you can grow it into something really great if you take the years and the time and do the work. But you've been so fortunate in being able to work with pretty much the best Rhode Island has ever had to offer as far as guitar players go.
Yeah, and you know, one of my favorite guitar players to work with is a guy named Rob Nelson. Rob doesn't get as much hype as some of these other guys because they got a little further on the,
Yeah.
you know, as far as getting closer to fame. Although he did, you know, in his early days, he did travel Europe and stuff like that. But
Yep.
the guy's just fine. He's playing Paul Murphy's old guitar.
Wow.
Paul, they gave it to him because they respected him that much that they
I
gave
saw
him Paul's
Rob
guitar.
a few years ago. I did a dual gig one night, and he was playing guitar for a swing band. They came to Taunton.
Yeah,
Roger Cerisi.
Roger Cerisi, All Stars. Yeah,
Because I knew Roger when he used to play in a rock band in Taunton called the Breakers.
hmm
And they came to do a reunion, and I did the first set. And that's when I met Rob. That night he played a Gibson 335.
Yeah,
Is that Murph's guitar?
yeah,
Wow. I didn't know that.
yeah.
I didn't
It's
know
going
that
back
was
to the
Paul's.
family when he's done with it.
Yes, as it should.
Yeah, he doesn't own. I mean, he owns it until he
He's the caretaker.
doesn't. Yeah, he's the caretaker.
Yeah.
You know, instruments like that are made to be played, not sat in a corner somewhere. You know.
It's so hard now, too, when you, like, a vintage 335, like, of that caliber,
Mm-hmm.
is now priced out of the market for the average working musician. We can't afford them. It's just gotten insane.
I mean, unless you're a collector and you buy and sell, but
Right. But for the
personally,
most part, I mean, you know, that guitar's worth $5 to $10 grand.
yeah,
And the average guy that's out doing gigs, you know, that's a serious hunk of change.
yeah, it's probably
You know,
400 or 500 brand new.
right.
Yeah,
That's what they cost back in those days. I used to wander into the original Ray Mullen music or Tony's music in Pawtucket, and I'd see Duke sitting in there trying guitars, and I'd be just like, wow, who's that guy? You know, you'd hear him playing all this great stuff. And those guitars were, like you said, a few $100
yep, yep.
for a used one, you know?
Yeah.
And now they're thousands and thousands of dollars. But I'm glad to hear that instrument's going to go back to Paul's family when Rob's
Yeah,
done playing the finish off the thing, you know? Because he sounded great when I heard him.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, he's
So you have a trio now.
I'm doing a trio thing. I mean, I do the other thing with the band as well,
Yep.
whenever I can, obviously. But this is it's called a Low Key 3, and it's myself, Michael Tanaka, and Johnny DeBasso on bass. And we do everything from jazz standards to soul ballads and
Nice.
some 60s tunes. You know, we do like You Don't Know What It's Like, some stuff like that. I do it my own way, obviously.
Of course.
But, a lot of those old tunes, I like to take. I learned that from Tommy Enright. You know, there's so many great songs, and for instance, we were going to do a song that he played, he covered by the Beach Boys, but you know, for legal reasons, we can't really do it. But I never liked that song. I was never a Beach Boys fan. You know, I never liked any of their music. It was like wimpy to me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Too white, basically. Not to
Well,
offend
it was
anyone,
white.
but
It was the whitest version of soul music you could find.
But when he took that song and did it his way, I was, wow, I think I like this song now. You know, and he did that to me with a few different tunes. Johnny Rivers, you know, Poor Side of Town, I'm doing that now also.
That's a great song.
Yeah, but he did it kind of like a reggae tune.
Yep.
You know, and it just, you know, and you never think about it. A lot of people just don't think of ways to do stuff differently.
You know, I agree wholeheartedly. I hear people often, you know, have criticisms for folks that do cover tunes.
Yeah.
Or they, you know, it's not the right genre of music or this or that. We were talking about this earlier. There's two kinds of music, folks. Good music and the other stuff. And if you take a great song and put your heart into it and make it your own, you've done something good. You're using your talent. You're interpreting a song.
Exactly.
When you hear jazz greats like Tony Bennett, or you know the old R&B singers, that's what they did. I mean, you know, and technically, you listen to the Motown guys. Those singers didn't write any of that stuff.
No.
They had staff writers, but they put themselves into it.
Yeah. It's, yeah. I don't know.
That's how you do it.
You got it, man.
That's how you do it. There's a lot
But
of
you
great.
know, that's why one of the things about, per se, cover bands that kind of bother me is they try to copy
Yeah,
and sound like the guys that did it originally. And there's not that many people that can do it, and why would you anyway? You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
It's like, it's been done already. Recognize the fact that it's a great song. Do it yourself.
I got kicked out of cover bands because I didn't do
Yeah.
perfect copies. I just didn't see the point in it.
Yeah.
But you know, a guitarist like Tom, he brought his own spirit
Yeah.
to the table with the song and made it his own.
Exactly. Yep.
You know. Now, the guitar player that you worked with in the Dynamic Johnsons,
John Packer.
John Packer,
Yeah.
didn't he play bass too
He became a bass player later on.
for Duke
He
Robillard?
played with Duke.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he moved to, poor Johnny. He moved to Amsterdam or something like that. He was over there for a bunch of years, and then he came back. And when he came back, he started work on the upright bass.
Mm-hmm.
His hands, you know, he was like put transmissions in big trucks and stuff. You know, he used
Yeah.
to come to gigs and his hands would be bleeding and swollen. You know,
Wow.
and you know, sometimes there'd be blood on the strings. So I think he started stiffening up as he got older. So he decided to try the bass, and he actually became a fine bass player.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Who were some of the other great guitar players around Rhode Island back in those days?
Well, you know, there was a guy named Michael Scribner, actually, who was a good dear friend of mine. We had the first band together called Telltale Heart.
Yep.
And we actually made it to Atlantic Records. Was up there with Roberta Flack was in the studio, and what's the jazz guy's name there that did on the Boardwalk?
Guitar player?
Yeah, I can't think of his name right now. Anyway,
I remember who sang it, but I don't know who the guitarist was.
Yeah, but anyway, George Benson.
Whoa! Wow.
Yeah, but anyway, we made it there. But as we didn't care about genre even then, so we did 4 tunes, and each one was a different genre, basically.
I see.
And you know, the A&R guy was like,
he didn't know what to do with you.
You can't, you know, you can't sell this. You have to be one thing or the other.
Ah.
And being young and punky like the young adults, and back in the day, we went,
You took the door.
Yeah, see ya.
I
Thanks.
did that myself once. I had an opportunity. I spent some time briefly with the president of United Artists. His name was Henry Jerome, and he ran that label at the peak of their success. And I toured with one of his singers named Bobby Martin. She had 3 big charting hits, For the Love of Him and a couple of others. And when that tour ended, he said, I'd like to have you come in and redo some Ricky Nelson tunes.
Nice.
This was in the 80s, and that was the furthest kind of music from my mind at that time.
Yeah.
I wanted to play hardcore blues because I was really, my head was so into that style at that time. Yeah. And I'm thinking, that's all outdated. No one's going to want to hear that 50s crap anymore. And I actually turned that down.
Yeah. He had one of the greatest guitar players coming up. Ricky Nelson's band was
Jimmy Burton.
Fabulous, yeah.
And when I look back on that, it took me 10 years to realize the gravity of the mistake that I made in turning that opportunity down. You know, that I've never been offered an opportunity like that ever again.
No, you don't get them twice usually.
No.
No. So that's youth, you know. When you're young, you're not that smart.
No, you're not. You're not very smart at all.
You can recognize that and pay attention to the older folks. You can really save yourself a lot of trouble.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you're doing a regular gig at Nick and Knees in Providence?
Nick and Knees, yeah, South Street in Providence. It's a great little dive, funky bar, but
great.
A wonderful place. Everybody's friendly. There's never any problems. You got a cross-section of people in the audience, you know, from lawyers to factory workers. Doesn't matter. And everybody has fun. So we're doing every other Thursday there, and I bring in a special guest now. And then I had Mark Cutler with me last 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, he's great.
It was the first time Mark and I have been on the scene for over 40 years. Together, the same scene, basically. I had never done a song together. So that was the first time we ever did songs together, and that was kind of fun. And
I bet.
Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood.
That's a great classic.
Yeah. Well, it was originally written for Nina Simone. A lot of people don't realize that.
I didn't know that.
And she did it was kind of more of a ballady between not up tempo like the Animals did it. So we took chords from both and bring the tempo into a medium spot, and it turned out to be a really nice tune. I like it.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when his name, he really started rising with that band, the Schemers.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
They went pretty
great
far,
writer,
too.
Great guitar player. He doesn't get as much credit as
he's
a
a great
guitar
player.
as
Yeah.
a lot of people do around here, because there's so many guys
So many that do it.
on the pedestal,
I saw him doing a gig with his Neil Young tribute.
Yeah, I've never seen that band yet.
And
it's got to be good.
They really cut him loose on
Yeah.
that, on the guitar solos. So you really get to see what a fine player he is.
Yeah,
And that was a real enjoyable thing, because I'm a big fan of that roots kind of music,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Tommy Ferraro, fine guitar player,
Tommy's been a guest on this show.
nice man, and he plays a Les Paul. There's not too many guys left that play the Les Paul.
He didn't start that way, though.
No.
And when I first saw him with Storm and Norman and the Hurricanes,
Oh God, yeah.
he was playing a Strat. Everybody played a Strat because Duke played a Strat.
Yeah.
It seemed to me whatever Duke had for a rig, everybody else got the same thing, because he was the man, plain and simple.
Yeah.
But Tommy had a Strat then, and then fast forward a bunch of years, I got to meet him at this music store in Attleboro that we used to hang out in. This friend of ours, Mike Clinton, owned. It was called the Music Depot.
Oh yeah, I heard that.
And Tommy he got a hollow body somewhere around that time, and he got into the T-Bone Walker thing.
Yeah.
But Tommy's a fine guitar player and an equally great guy, too.
Yeah, nice guy. Good
Yeah.
man.
Now, have you got to work with Tommy?
Well, I've worked with him a few times.
I saw you guys together at the Sunday gig you had in West Warwick. What was the name of that club?
Oh, yeah. That was that's his Vintage Rhythm and Blues thing.
Vintage Rhythm and Blues Ensemble. You did a date with him, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was actually, I think I was filled in because Sugar Ray had canceled. He had to go to Europe, and he was leaving, that day, the day before.
Oh,
or
you
something.
guys sounded great. You covered all the soul classics.
So they called me up, and I went and did it.
Yeah, that was the first time I had seen you in probably
long time,
25 plus years.
Yeah,
since that time in the '80s when we first met.
yeah,
yeah. And you haven't lost a step, that's for sure. You sang great, and still got the moves out there.
Oh, stop it! No, I'm having fun, and I've been learning. I never stopped learning how to sing.
Yeah.
I think I'm a better singer now than I was 30, 40 years ago, because I learned some stuff, and I pay attention now to technique, breathing techniques and such, rather than just, going
Raw
out there
power.
and wailing,
Well, it's easy to lose your voice, too, if you don't.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about the low-key 3, there's no drummer, and it's soft, and I can...
No offense to you drummers out there.
Yeah, no, I love drummers. But anyway, there's no drummer, so I can hear myself so well.
Yeah.
That you can do this soft stuff, and your whole range increases. It's easier to breathe, and you can just open up. Hopefully, you open up anyway.
Well, I mean, that's your instrument, and you've got to know how to take care of it and work with it.
Sometimes, when I don't feel good, I do better because I really pay attention. And if you breathe properly and use the proper mechanics, then you can pretty much sing through any kind of ailment.
Yeah.
You might not be able to go where no man has gone before, but you can stay in tune. You can get it out where it's still an enjoyable thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I sang when I was younger in bands, I've never felt like I was very good, and they didn't let me sing much more than, Ride Sally Ride in the background on a few basic tunes. Yeah. And then I realized I was attempting to sing material that was not appropriate for my voice. It was out of my range, and I never found my voice. And then when I got serious about blues and acoustic music, I was the only singer. And suddenly I could hear everything, and I picked keys that worked for my voice.
Yeah, that's a big one.
I could hear myself, and it was like, okay, I do have a voice. I just needed to get to the places where it's appropriate, you know, the key selections and things like that. And instead of trying to scream these 70s rock tunes and things like that I had no business attempting.
Yeah,
you know, and I'd watch guys like you and other people that had technique. And I was like, that guy's not blowing his voice out after the third song.
In my first band, I had no clue what I was doing. So if I did a cover tune, I did it in the key that the guy did it in before me.
Right.
And if I couldn't hit the higher notes, I'd go down instead. And it was like, took all the life out of my voice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I got a part in an operetta, a world premiere of an operetta called Rage of the Heart, at the theater downtown. The guy that wrote his name was Enrico Gazzilli. And at the end of it all, you know, he started talking to me about my voice and stuff. And so at the end of it all, I asked him if he would, you know, if he'd coach me for a while.
Oh, wow.
And he did. And I made huge strides after that. It was just, you know, if anybody thinks that, you know, taking voice lessons doesn't help you as a rock singer or a blues singer or a soul singer or any other kind of singer, then you're mistaken, because it does. And then once you learn that technique, you can apply it to anything, any kind of music, doesn't matter, and you'll see your voice will change exponentially because of it. And it's all of a sudden you're not, you know, most of my career, when I heard myself back on tape, I was like, oh man, it sounds different than that in my head, you know. But if you work at it, you can get to a point where you hear yourself and you go, oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's nice.
Intonation and all these things.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. Just singing isn't just opening your mouth, you know. There's a lot to it.
Absolutely.
Just like learning how to play a guitar, you know.
Yeah, yeah, you know, I mean, we've been so blessed here in these little 25, 30-mile radius.
Oh, yeah.
When I think of the level of talent that has come out of this little neck of the woods, it's extraordinary, folks. You know, all the great players you've heard us talk about today, Tommy Onright and Paul Murphy, Duke Robillard, Tommy Ferraro, Neil Vitullo, and Rob Nelson.
Yeah.
I mean, the list is endless. But what we'd like you to do is come out and support live music, and go and see Gary at Nick and Knees, and support all the live stuff you can, because you got to see these guys while they're still out there doing it. And we appreciate that you're still doing it, Gary, and I thank you for being with us today on the show.
Thanks. That's why I came back from Canada. I wasn't doing anything up there
to do this show, folks. Right. So get out and see him.
And it was a long drive.
Get out and see him. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Guitar Talk, folks. We'll see you soon. God bless you.